Well, to talk more about the reality of war versus the reality portrayed on your television screens, Michael Preisner, Iraq War veteran, joins us now. Welcome, Michael. So why do you think we don't see more of these images that show the true cost of war?
Well, it's good that your report referenced the Vietnam War and the fact that during Vietnam, the war was brought into people's living rooms every evening, and they saw it from the front lines. And the U.S. government made a calculation that the reason that so many people took action to force the war to end was because they were seeing it every day. And so the change in policy was a very conscious, concerted effort to hide the reality of U.S. conflict from the American public, because the U.S. government felt if they wanted to wantonly carry out the mission that they wanted to and shield it from the public, this is what they would have to do. So, I wish it wasn't necessary for people to see the gruesome reality of war. But the situation we're in today is such that a war that's being waged is opposed by the vast majority of Americans, a war for empire, a war that's costing us literally hundreds of millions of dollars a day in precious resources, and one that's costing a massive casualties of innocent people in Afghanistan and among U.S. soldiers. But the U.S. government tells us that we're not allowed to look at that. We're not allowed to observe the war. We're not allowed to see its effects.
There are, though, Michael, some rare instances where we do see graphic images. For example, and I think we have the video where Gaddafi was killed or when Saddam Hussein was killed. Those bloody images were all over the place. Why is it okay in that scenario?
Right. Well, the censorship of raw images from Iraq and Afghanistan is part of the government's attempt to have full control of the narrative. So they want people to see what they want people to see. So the photos that they release will be the photos that they want people to see, and what they want will shape the narrative in the way that they want. It's about control of information so that they can shape public opinion to suit their interests. And this is completely contrary to the concept of democracy we're told that we live under.
And can you talk about how this policy impacts people's perception of war and what's going on abroad?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, already, I think it's first important to point out that majority opinion is already against the Afghanistan war. All polls show that the vast majority of people in the United States oppose the war in and out of the military, not to mention the people of Afghanistan. But the government knows that a political fallout from an image, from a report, can set off a spark that leads to a revival of the mass anti-war movement, because it is the people that have the ability to end the war, and the U.S. government is well aware of this, and that the fact that they're hiding these little facts and hiding the reality of the occupation, even though most people already oppose it, they're trying to prevent more outrage and more anger that takes form in the streets and takes form in a movement.
Now, if some more of these images were exposed, images from the battlefield, some of similar to what you had mentioned previously of these images that were exposed in Vietnam, how do you think that would affect people's sentiment toward war today?
Well, I think that if people saw the everyday life in Afghanistan, saw the effect that it had on the people in Afghanistan, saw the daily tragedy experienced by U.S. soldiers and civilians in Afghanistan, it would move them to take action against the war. I mean, it would show them the reality of what all of their tax money is paying for, why their education is being cut, why their social services and Medicare is being cut, why jobs are going away, is to pay for those things and to pay for those atrocities. And that's something that can really move people into action. And now the government says that they don't show these images out of respect for the families of the people who were involved in them, which is a complete lie. If they had any respect for the families or service members whatsoever, they wouldn't be sending them to endlessly kill and die in a war that the vast majority of people oppose. If they had any respect for us and our family, they'd stop lying about the war, they'd end it immediately, and they'd bring those resources back home.
Now, Michael, I know in newsrooms across the country there are some pretty strict policies as to what can be put in the news, to not show dead bodies, especially children, that there's these strict policies that are in place. They just don't want to subject their viewers to these graphic images. So what about the argument that there is a time and place for everything, and possibly graphic and violent images shouldn't be smothered on screens during the morning or evening news?
Well, I think that the mainstream media today, it's become quite clear, is nothing more than just a mouthpiece for the Pentagon and for Washington. to serve their interests and the message that they want to go out. But I think that journalists and what the free press is supposed to be is having the responsibility to show the people what the reality of the situation is that is being done in their name and being done with their tax dollars and with their families and their loved ones. And so it may be stuff that's hard to look at, but you know what? It's the reality, and it's happening every single day and has been happening for 10 years on our dime and with our friends and family.
All right, Michael, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming on the show. That was Michael Preisner, Iraq War veteran.